Welcome to Module 9 of our Intermediate Financial Accounting course. This module all about investments. We're putting our money to work for us. And we're really concerned with two categories of investments: debt investments and equity investments. So I'll talk about each, and I'll talk about how we're going to cover them in this course and in any intermediate accounting course. So debt investments you should think of as bonds. So a company wants to borrow money, or in this case, we're going to be buying debt investments. We want to lend money to a company. So if you buy government bonds or municipal bonds or corporate bonds, you are lending money to that person or that company. They're promising to pay you back, typically interest every 6 months. They're going to make interest payments, and then 5, 10, 15 years later, depends on the term of the bond, they'll give you your money back. So I give you $1,000 today, you say 5% interest. So every year you're going to give me $50 in interest. And then 10 years later, you've given me $50 in interest every year, you give me my $1,000 back. That would be an example of a debt investment from my perspective, right? I'm lending you the money, you're paying me back over time. Well, accounting for this is kind of funny because it depends on the intention of me, the investor, the lender. Is it my intention to buy the bond and then just sell it a month later or 6 months later before you've paid me back? Just buy and sell. I'm trading bonds. Well, that's very different from somebody who lends you the money and just is there for the long haul, right? And so if I, as the debt investor, am there for the long haul, we call that, accounting for that, held to maturity investing. And the idea is I'm planning to hold on to this bond until the guy pays me back. So accounting for that is different from accounting for the guy who's trading every day, right? Is buying and selling all the time. So the held to maturity investment, we value that at something called amortized cost. And if you learned bonds with me in intro accounting, you'll know this is just the other side of that coin. We prepare an effective interest table. There's bond premiums and bond discounts being amortized over time that affects our interest on the bond. And if you can't remember doing that, or you've forgotten, or you never did it in the first place, don't worry. We're going to learn how to make an effective interest table and do the journal entries for held to maturity debt investments. That'll be a topic in this module. So again, we're buying a bond, which means we're lending somebody money and they're going to pay us back 5, 10, 15 years later. It's a long-term investment. They're going to pay us back sometime later, and we've got to do the journal entries for that. And we'll learn how to do that this chapter. The second option is trading securities, held for trading, or just I'm going to call them trading investments. So if I buy a bond with the explicit intention of, like, I'm going to sell this, it's a 10-year bond, but I'm going to sell it in the next few months or next year or two, we got to account for it differently. My mindset is different. I need to account for it because, bonds have a market just like stocks have a market. I need to say, well, what's the fair value in the market? The held to maturity bond, the person doesn't care about the bond market. They're not looking, looking at the newspaper, their, Yahoo Finance listing for the bond to see if their bond price went up or down like we would with a stock. They're just saying, is this person going to pay me every 6 months for the next 10 years? I'm happy. The trading person really cares about the ups and downs. And so because they really care about the ups and downs, they have to account for this bond at fair value. I'm going to just abbreviate that as FV. And in fact, it's specifically, we call it FVNI, fair value through net income. They revenues and expenses. They'll, if the bond went up, they'll say, oh, I have an unrealized gain because I haven't sold the bond yet, so it's not realized. That's just a revenue account, like other revenue. Or if it went down, I have an unrealized loss on holding this bond. So if you buy debt for trading, which is kind of unusual. Most people buy stocks to trade. Bonds are more unusual to trade, but if the company did, we'll deal with that at fair value. The toughest option, so option 1, I bought the bond, I'm going to hold it until they pay me back. Option 2, I bought the bond and I'm not holding it until they pay me back. I'm going to sell it. Option 3 is I might sell it, but I might hold on to it. And we call this category available for sale. My intentions are not crystal clear. I'm not for sure going to hold it till the end. I'm not for sure going to trade it. I'll just wait and see. And available for sale is a middle ground between the two, and it's the top. You do a little bit of both. You have to prepare an effective interest table like we do under option 1, but you also have to revalue to fair value like we do under option 2, and it's the hardest for sure of the three, but because it's the hardest, probably your professor's going to ask you about it, and I've got good examples on available for sale investments. Ultimately, the model, they say, is fair value through OCI, and we'll get into it. OCI, other comprehensive income. So when we write up or down our investment, we don't use normal revenue and expense accounts. We use OCI accounts. It's the most complex because it really does combine the two. It's the hardest of both worlds. So you use effective interest table to restate the value, and then you pump it up or down based on what the stock market or the bond market says, what the fair value is. So you're kind of doing both. It's the most challenging, but I've got examples on option 1, held to maturity, option 2, held for trading, and option 3, available for sale debt investment. So this is, again, we're buying bonds. That's a type of investment companies can have. Okay. Other side of the table, we've got equity investments, and our three categories here are a little bit different in the way I conceptualize them. It's not really the intent. It's more the size / influence you have. So as an investor, if I buy Microsoft shares, I have no influence. I have no control over the company. And so, no influence is option 1. Or minimal influence. Option 2 is I buy a company. I don't own 50% of shares, but I buy enough to have something called significant influence. So option 1, option 2, and then option 3. Significant influence. Meaning I own so many shares that my opinion matters. When I talk to the board of directors, maybe I have a board of directors seat, but my opinion matters and I can shape the direction of the company, or at least steer it a little bit. Option 3 is I own enough shares just to have the votes. I control the company. So option 3 is control. And there's sort of ownership stakes here. So we say less than 20% you're expected to have no influence. So if you own 7% of the company, you can't tell them what to do. 20 to 50% you are assumed to have significant influence. Not always, but that's sort of the rule of thumb. Now, when I say not always, let's just say I own 30%. Well, if I own 30% of a company, probably I got a lot of votes, I got a lot of power in the company. But if it's me and one other person, and that one other person has 70% and I have 30%, they can just tell me what to do because they have the votes. They can win every vote 7-3, right? They have more votes than me. So it really depends on the circumstance, but the general rule of thumb is from 20 to 50% you have significant influence, and you have control at 50% plus 1, right? As soon as you're over 50%, you have enough votes to win every vote. You can elect the board of directors. You can hire the CEO. It's your company at that point. So accounting for these three methods is a little bit different. If you have no influence, you just write up or down the stock to its fair value. So we account for stock investments, equity investments at fair value, and it's through net income. I'm going to put a little star there. There is a small exception under IFRS. IFRS maybe FV fair value through OCI under certain circumstances. They have to make a specific election. IFRS generally is going to be the same as US GAAP, same as, just the normal method is fair value through net income. IFRS can make a special election to state their no influence investments fair value through OCI, again, under certain criteria. We'll go through it in this chapter, but primarily that's what we're looking at, fair value through net income. What about if I have significant influence in the company? Well, the idea here is I'm not investing in this as a stock to trade. If I own 25% of the company, there is some strategic reason I'm doing it. Maybe I'm buying a supplier and I want to ensure I have enough supply, so I invest in them to influence them to supply me more, to give me the best of their supply, whatever, right? I bought a big chunk of a company for a strategic reason. Well, in that case, we don't really care about the stock market price of that investment. We'd like it to go up, but we don't really care. We bought them for a different reason. And as a consequence, we account for it a different way called the equity method. And when you account for something with significant influence under the equity method, the idea is we're going to take their profits, so their net income, of course, goes into their retained earnings. Anytime their retained earnings goes up, we go, oh, our investment value went up because their accounting retained earnings went up. Anytime their retained earnings goes down, we go, oh, our investment went down. And so their retained earnings goes down not only because of net income, but also if they pay dividends, it goes down. If they have a net loss, their retained earnings could go down. So that's the equity method, and we'll learn how to do that. And honestly, it's sort of weird, like it's this foreign concept. The accounting for it's actually not hard. So that's the good news. Equity method, journal entries, not super hard. The final method is control. This is by far the hardest. You own more than 50% of your subsidiary now. You own the company. You do something called a consolidation. Is that behind my head? Consolidation. And the idea behind a consolidation is this. If I own, let's say, 60% of the company, I take all of their assets, not 60%, all of their assets, and I put them on records because I control all of their assets. I control the company. So I put 100% of their assets, 100% of their liabilities on my books, but it's accounting for that becomes a challenge. And it's such a challenge that number one, we cover in this course. Number two, we cover in this course. Number three, we do not cover in this course. That is 6 weeks, maybe more, of an advanced financial accounting class. So you have that to look forward to in your future, but we're certainly not covering it in most typical intermediate accounting classes, and certainly not in mine. It's a challenging topic. I love it. I really enjoy doing consolidations, but we are not going to do them here. I may add videos on consolidations down the road, but certainly it's not on my mind to do today. So when we look at chapter 9, I read 2 categories. So it's like chapter 2. No, it's chapter 9. When we look at chapter 9, we're really learning 5 different types of investments. So we got debt that we're planning to just hold until they pay us back. We got debt that we're holding just to buy and sell as like almost like stocks. We're just buying and selling the debt. And we got debt that we're not sure what to do with, and that's the hardest thing we learn all week. Then we have investments where, I bought 20 Microsoft shares, stated at fair value, restated at fair value at the end of the year. I got equity where I own a big chunk of the company and I do have some say-so over what's going on in the company, in which case we use equity method accounting. And the last one, we're not going to do this chapter. So number 3, where we own more than 50% of the company. We're the boss. All the assets, all the liabilities come over to our books, but it's complicated accounting. Anyway, there you go. Mod 9, a fun but challenging chapter. The best way to learn anything in accounting, though, is to do lots of examples, and I've got lots waiting for you on all of those topics I mentioned. I can't wait to get started, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. The next video in our series is right up here, and if you want a supercut of all of the videos in this series, that's the one down below.